Go.
Vermicompost.
Hi, my name's Patrick,
Hi, Dalton here.
and today we're going to be talking to you about vermicompost.
Worms are cool first.
In this video, we're going to answer some questions like, what is it? How does it work? Why use it? And how to make one on your own.
So, what is vermicompost? As a high value, it typically sells for $425 a yard as opposed to $35 a yard, which typical compost sells for. And essentially, all it is worm poop. But don't let that stop you because it is some valuable.
How does the process work? The first step is collecting the cow manure and separating it into two parts, liquid and solid. The solids are then left out to compost, which is the first biological breakdown of the manure. That compost is then given to the worms as their food. The worms continue the breakdown process, and vermicompost is the byproduct of them pooping.
So why would you use it? It uses less space to use a vermicompost setup because the nutrients are in a more elemental form coming out of the worms, which leads to a better quality fertilizer for crops.
So how do you build a vermicomposting unit? You need 5 basic things. You need a container, compost as a food source, worms, a separation method to separate the vermicompost from the rest of the structure, and environmental controls. Container. For our unit, we'll be using a plastic tub as our container. The reason we went with a plastic tub is because they're cheap, a good size, and readily available. The only cons to using a plastic tub are that they cannot hold a large volume of vermicompost, and the separation of the vermicompost and the rest of the worms will be a manual process. This tub will be about 2 feet wide by 3 feet long and about 1 foot high. Compost.
For our process, we are using a food source of cow manure. As we discussed earlier in our process flow, that manure must be separated out and pre-compost in order to be fed to the worms. And so the first step of our food source is to get the compost to the worms.
Worms. There are 2 types of worms that you typically use in a vermicomposter unit. Red wrigglers or night crawlers. The reason why we use worms in our vermicomposting unit is because the worms eat the compost and then the nutrients are in a more elemental form so the plants can use them quicker. Separation method. Here's a side view of our container. For our separation method, we're going to put compost in one corner. The worms will then be placed on top of this new compost. After the worms have fully broken down that compost, a newer batch of compost is put on the opposite side of the container. Because they're moving over to the new compost, we will then be able to remove the old compost and use it. Environmental control.
Now the worms need the right environmental characteristics in order to be successful. First off, they like a dark environment because they are night crawlers, nocturnal vermicompost bugs. They prefer a cool temperature of 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and because they are skin breathers, they do require a little bit of moisture in their compost to maintain their slippery aspects. In summary, vermicompost is better than regular compost because of the nutrient availability for the plants. Vermicompost can cover more acreage versus normal compost, which in turn is a higher value product, so you can sell it for a higher profit.